Welcome back to another deep dive. We know you, our listener, are tuning in today for a very, very specific reason.
Yeah, you want to cut through the absolute avalanche of noise out there.
Exactly. I mean, you're looking for a clear, balanced synthesis of complex ideas.
Right.
And you want to walk away with something actionable.
Something that actually changes how you perceive the world.
Right, without just, feeling completely overwhelmed by information overload, which is a real problem these days.
Oh, totally. And the source material we've gathered for you today is, well, it's perfectly suited for that exact mission.
It really is. We're looking at a framework that directly challenges our fundamental human instinct to just divide and conquer.
Yeah. The focus today rests on the notes, the background text, and the event architecture for a really specific presentation.
Right. Delivered by Vid Maitri Goswami.
Exactly.
And the talk she gave is titled Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya, Where They Converge.
Such a great title.
Right. And we're pulling this from the 4th edition of the Global Festival of Oneness, also known as GFO 2023.
Which is this massive event hosted by Indica Moksha, the Advaita Academy.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the heavy philosophical lifting of these two, historical giants, let's set the stage with a question.
Okay.
What happens when we stop looking at the philosophical differences between great thinkers and instead, intentionally look at where their ideas perfectly align?
It completely shifts the paradigm of how we consume knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does.
Exactly. Well, let me give you a visual to sort of ground this.
Yeah.
Imagine you are standing in a vast valley, right? Looking up at two towering mountains.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
From down on the ground, they look entirely separate. They're these massive, distinct peaks.
Right.
And human nature being what it is, people naturally build camps at the base of one mountain or the other.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
They spend centuries pointing up at their chosen peak, arguing about, which one is higher, which one has the better view.
And how fundamentally opposed they are to the other camp.
Exactly. But if you were to dig beneath that valley floor, you would realize something really profound.
Which is that they're connected.
Yes. Those two entirely separate mountains are actually just different outcroppings of the exact same continuous bedrock.
That's a really great way to put it. And finding that shared bedrock is the entire premise of the Global Festival of Oneness.
Yeah.
Because understanding the context of this festival is vital before we even touch the specific philosophies.
Right. This isn't just a casual weekend seminar we're talking about here.
Not at all. This is a rigorous, month-long online celebration. I mean, it runs from April 25th all the way to May 24th.
And it's deliberately timed, right?
Yes. It's timed to coincide with Shankaracharya, which honors the birth and the legacy of Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavadpada.
And the language the source material uses to describe him is incredibly striking. I mean, they don't just refer to him as a philosopher.
Or just some ancient thinker, yeah.
Right. They describe him as one of the foremost socio-cultural spiritual architects of Indian civilization.
And the term architect there is carrying a lot of weight. It's chosen for a very specific reason.
Because an architect does more than just design a pretty facade.
Exactly. They don't just design a single room. They design the structural integrity of a building so it can survive, earthquakes, storms, the passage of time.
Right.
Adi Shankaracharya basically laid down a philosophical framework, a blueprint of non-dualism, or Advaita.
Uh-huh.
And it was robust enough to support the cultural and spiritual weight of an entire civilization for centuries.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I want to push back slightly on that idea.
Sure.
When we talk about an architect of a civilization, we usually think of a king or an emperor, right?
So I'm building physical things.
Yeah, someone who builds roads or writes laws. But philosophy is invisible. It exists purely in the mind.
Right.
So how does someone architect an entire culture just by establishing a school of thought?
Well, that is the crucial distinction right there. I mean, a king builds roads, yes, but an architect of thought builds the lens through which the culture views reality itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Shankaracharya didn't just write texts. He established an entire methodology for understanding existence.
Okay.
He organized ascetic orders, he established centers of learning, and he systematized a way of interpreting the ancient texts.
So he gave people a unified foundation to stand on.
Exactly. Even when their individual practices looked completely different, they had that shared bedrock.
Which brings us to how this festival actually frames that legacy. Because it isn't just looking back at Shankaracharya as some isolated historical figure, trapped in the past.
Right, it's very much alive.
Yeah, the entire month-long event is structured as a tribute to a continuous, unbroken chain. The texts call it the Advaita Guru Parampara.
The lineage. It is literally the mechanism of transmission.
Right, but I think we need a better way to visualize this for the listener.
Okay, what do you have in mind?
Think of this lineage not as like a dusty timeline in a museum, but as an ancient, incredibly high-stakes relay race of knowledge.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. The baton in this race is the fundamental truth of oneness. And the sources tell us this specific relay starts at the very beginning with Bhagavan Sadashiva.
The primordial source of consciousness and wisdom in this tradition.
Exactly. Then the baton is passed down through generations until, right in the middle of this grand historical relay, it lands in the hands of Adi Shankaracharya.
And he takes it, systematizes it, and passes it on.
Exactly. And the festival explicitly honors the fact that this relay is still happening right now, today.
Yes.
It's passing into the hands of what the text calls modern Kshatriya and Brahmanista acharyas.
We should probably define those terms for clarity.
Exactly.
Because they explain exactly how this relay race avoids turning into a massive game of telephone where the message gets garbled.
Right. Nobody wants a garbled message after 1,000 years.
Exactly. So a Kshatriya is someone who has absolute rigorous mastery over the scriptures. They know the texts inside and out.
Okay.
But knowing the words isn't enough, right?
Yeah.
A Brahmanista is someone who is firmly established in the supreme reality.
So they don't just read the philosophy.
Right. They experience it. They live the ultimate truth of it.
So you really need both. You need the intellectual data and the lived experience to successfully pass the baton.
What's fascinating here is that this dual requirement is precisely what keeps the wisdom intact and relevant over millennia. Think about it. If this knowledge was just written down in a book and left in a library somewhere, it would eventually become an artifact.
Yeah, people would study it as a relic of a bygone era.
Exactly. But because of this unbroken relay race, this Guru Parampara, maintained by individuals who both know the text and live the reality, the knowledge remains a living, breathing entity.
It proves that truth is something meant to be continuously synthesized and handed down. It makes the wisdom dynamic. It moves through time, adapting to the language of the era without losing its core.
Exactly.
And that dynamic movement brings us directly to the core of today's deep dive, which is the presentation by Vallabhacharya Goswami.
Yes, her talk.
She steps onto this massive global platform a month dedicated entirely to Adi Shankaracharya, and the topic she chooses is Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya, where they converge.
Which is a profoundly brave academic pursuit, honestly. Well, you're dealing with two towering historical figures. Adi Shankaracharya, who consolidated Advaita Vedanta, the philosophy of absolute non-dualism.
Right.
And then Vallabhacharya, another monumental philosopher who founded his own distinct philosophical tradition centuries later.
Okay.
In the traditional academic study of Indian philosophy, these two are almost exclusively approached through the lens of their distinctions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because the very title of her talk, Where They Converge, is basically a quiet rebellion against how you and I are normally taught to process information.
Oh,
We're trained by modern education and frankly by social media algorithms to categorize thinkers into opposing camps.
Yes, everything is black and white.
Right. We say, well, thinker A believes reality is ultimately formless, and thinker B emphasizes devotion and the attributes of the divine, therefore they are enemies.
We define positions by highlighting how they differ. It provides clear boundaries, which, feels intellectually safe.
But it creates a massive blind spot.
It does.
It's like standing on the shore, staring at the surface of the water and arguing about the different shapes of the waves.
Oh, wow, that's a good analogy.
You have one camp arguing that a tall, crashing wave is the true form of water. And you have another camp arguing that a long, smooth swell is the true form.
Right.
And they will write treatises and wage academic wars over which wave is more authentic.
All while completely ignoring the fact that every single wave is made of the exact same ocean.
Yes. They're arguing over the temporary shape of the water while forgetting the water itself. So Maitri Goswami is asking the listener to dive beneath the surface. By focusing on convergence, she's searching for that shared ocean.
Right.
But I have to ask you, if these two philosophers ultimately converge on the same bedrock truth, why do we even have two different traditions?
That's a fair question.
I mean, why didn't Vallabhacharya just copy and paste Shankaracharya's work and call it a day?
Well, That is the genius of the Indian philosophical landscape. Let's use a different lens here.
Okay.
Imagine a master jeweler. You have a lump of raw, unshaped, pure gold.
Got it.
That represents the unmanifest, ultimate, non-dual reality, the absolute oneness that Shankaracharya often points us toward.
Okay.
But human beings are complex. Not everyone can comprehend or relate to a formless lump of gold.
Right, it's too abstract.
Exactly. So the jeweler takes that same gold and crafts it into a beautiful, intricate necklace or a polished coin.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
That represents the manifest world, the expressions of the divine, the path of devotion that thinkers like Vallabhacharya might emphasize to reach the seeker.
So the necklace looks entirely different from the raw lump. If you only look at the form, they seem like opposite things.
Precisely. You only look at the form, you see division. You see two different paths, two different philosophies.
Right.
But if you melt them down, if you look at where they converge, they're both 100% pure gold.
Wow.
The convergence isn't about ignoring their distinct approaches. It's about recognizing that the underlying element they're working with is identical.
That's incredible. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, her focus on convergence perfectly embodies the entire spirit of the event.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the festival is literally named the Global Festival of Oneness. You can't authentically celebrate oneness if your entire academic structure is built on dissecting division.
Right, or proving why your specific wave is better than someone else's.
Exactly. By actively synthesizing the philosophies of Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya, Vid, Maitri Garswami is proving that oneness isn't just a catchy marketing title for a festival.
No, it's not.
It's the fundamental operational reality of the philosophy itself.
And it requires a much higher level of critical thinking to find harmony between complex systems than it does to just point out their flaws or differences.
Definitely.
It asks the listener to elevate their own understanding.
And what I deeply appreciate about the sources we are looking at is how the festival organizers handled that exact challenge.
What do you mean?
Well, they didn't just leave this concept of oneness floating up in the academic clouds. They built a highly intentional framework to ensure this knowledge actually lands in a way that is useful for you, the listener.
Oh, the scheduling.
Yeah. The texts detail that over the course of a month, the festival features nearly 50 sages, scholars, and seekers.
Which is a logistical mountain.
Right. But they organized all that wisdom into two very distinct daily sessions, highlighting two completely different mechanisms for interacting with knowledge.
The dual structure of the daily schedule is perhaps the most instructive part of the entire event, honestly. They split the day into a morning session and an evening session. And the contrast between what happens in those 2 hours reveals everything about how this tradition survives.
Let's break those down. The morning sessions run from 7:00 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. Indian Standard Time.
Okay.
And the text explicitly states these are designed for serious seekers of Vedanta. The focus here is deeply analytical.
Very rigorous.
Yeah, it is a rigorous thematic treatment of Shankaracharya's Prasthana Bhashya and his other classical works.
We should probably pause and clarify what the Prasthana Bhashya actually is.
Good idea.
Because it is the cornerstone of this morning rigor. It refers to the commentaries Shankaracharya wrote on the three foundational texts of Vedanta: the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, and the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
These are dense, complex, highly technical philosophical texts.
Right. So what does this all mean? Why subject people to that level of density at 7 in the morning?
Good question.
Let me give you an analogy. Attending that morning session is like enrolling in a master class in the theoretical physics of electricity.
Oh, I like this.
You're sitting there, studying complex equations, learning the exact mechanics of how electrons move, and understanding the profound invisible forces that generate power across the universe.
Right.
It is heavy, it requires intense focus, and it is absolutely necessary if you want to understand the true nature of energy.
But, and this is the critical pivot, knowing the theoretical physics of electron flow does not automatically mean you know how to wire a light switch in your own living room.
Bingo. You can understand the theory of electricity perfectly and still sit in the dark when you go home.
Exactly.
And that is exactly why the evening sessions are so vital. From 7:00 p.m. to 8:00 p.m. IST, the festival shifts gears completely.
They move away from the dense classical text.
Right. Instead, they focus on Shankaracharya's life, his cultural contributions, and most importantly, a concept they call applied Vedanta.
Applied Vedanta, it is such a phenomenal term.
It really is.
It's the active exploration of how Advaita, this towering philosophy of ultimate non-dualism and oneness, is actually relevant right now, today, across different modern fields.
So, going back to our analogy, if the morning is the theoretical physics of electricity,
Yeah.
the evening session of Applied Vedanta is an expert handing you a toolbox, walking into your house, and teaching you how to run copper wire so you can plug your own life into that massive grid.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
It's taking the theoretical power of the universe and using it to turn the lights on in your specific, messy, day-to-day reality.
This raises an important question, though.
Yeah.
We talk about oneness, we talk about non-dualism, but how do you actually apply that?
Right.
What does Applied Vedanta look like for a normal person who isn't a monk or an ancient scholar?
Exactly.
How do we take something so vast and apply it to a modern world that is defined by division, political polarization, workplace stress, and just, constant distraction?
I love that you asked that because this is where the philosophy stops being a historical curiosity and becomes a daily tool.
Yes.
Let's ground this. Say you are a manager and you have 2 employees on your team who are locked in a toxic, escalating conflict.
Okay, very relatable.
Right. They are undermining each other, projects are failing, and the environment is miserable. The standard dualistic approach is to look at them as 2 completely separate entities.
Naturally.
You look for who is right, who is wrong, who needs to be punished, or who needs to be fired. You are dealing entirely with the surface waves.
You're treating the symptoms of division.
Exactly. But if you are practicing applied Vedanta, you fundamentally shift your lens.
How so?
You stop looking at just the friction and you look for the shared bedrock. You recognize that both of these employees, beneath their defensive egos and their differing methodologies, share a fundamental desire for respect, security, or success within the company.
They share the same underlying reality.
Yes. When a leader approaches a conflict from a place of assumed oneness rather than assumed division, the entire conversation changes.
It shifts from adversarial to collaborative.
Exactly. You aren't forcing 2 opposing things together. You are reminding them that they were never truly separate to begin with.
That is a perfect execution of the concept. Applied Vedanta is recognizing that knowledge, no matter how ancient, pure, or philosophically sound, only reaches its full potential when it is bridged to our current reality.
It really is.
It removes the friction from daily interactions because you stop fighting the illusion of separation.
And the festival's organizers clearly understood that human beings need both ends of the spectrum.
Oh, absolutely.
By setting up these 2 daily pillars, the 7.0 a.m. pure theory and the 7.00 p.m. practical application, they created a complete self-sustaining ecosystem of learning.
Because you simply cannot have one without the other.
Right. If you only have the theory, you possess a beautiful, intellectually stimulating idea that never actually changes your behavior.
And conversely, if you only focus on the application, if you only want the life hacks and the quick fixes, without ever grappling with the deep understanding of the source texts,
what happens?
the knowledge eventually dilutes. You lose the structural integrity of the architect's blueprint over time.
It creates a perfect harmony. And frankly, it perfectly mirrors the very concept of the continuous lineage we discussed at the start of the deep dive.
Oh, the Guru Parampara.
Exactly. The ancient, unshakable foundation of the Guru Parampara is that morning study. And the living, breathing continuation of it in the modern day is the evening application.
You need the deep roots to grow the new branches.
You do. It is the absolute ideal environment to explore a complex academic idea like the convergence of Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya.
Right, because you have the rigorous morning space to understand the dense texts.
And then the evening space to ask the only question that really matters. Why does this convergence matter to us right now?
Which is the question we must always return to. Why does any of this matter?
Exactly.
The architecture of a civilization's spirituality, or its philosophical bedrock, isn't just built to be admired from a distance like some monument. It is built to be lived in.
And that is why this matters to you. Tuning in right now. You don't need to be an ancient sage, and you certainly don't need to be a scholar of classical Indian texts to borrow the immense power of this framework.
Absolutely not.
We've covered a lot of ground today, so let's distill the core takeaways.
Sounds good.
We started by examining the Global Festival of Oneness, a month-long tribute honoring the sociocultural blueprint laid down by Adi Shankaracharya.
Yeah.
We saw how this tradition isn't about looking backward at static history. It is an active, unbroken relay race.
the Advaita Guru Parampara.
Right. Passing the baton of truth from Bhagavan Sadashiva down through the millennia directly to the teachers of today.
We also explored the profound challenge issued by Vid Maitri Goswami's presentation.
Yes.
By choosing to focus on the convergence of two distinct thinkers like Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya, she challenges us to look past the superficial differences in form.
The waves versus the ocean.
Exactly. She asks us to find the shared gold, the shared ocean. It is an intellectual call to look for synthesis and unity in a world that profits off conflict.
And finally, we saw the brilliant mechanics of how this knowledge is kept alive.
The festival structure.
Yeah. We looked at the balance between the intense textual study of the Prasthana Trayabhashya in the morning and the deeply practical, world-facing approach of applied Vedanta in the evening.
It is the ultimate reminder that profound ideas must be utilized as tools.
They really must. Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes meeting, trying to navigate a difficult relationship, or just doing your absolute best to stay grounded in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and fragmented.
Yeah.
The ability to actively look for oneness is incredibly practical. It is essentially a superpower against feeling overwhelmed by the noise.
It really is.
When you stop looking at how everything is disconnected and start purposefully looking at where things converge, the world becomes infinitely more navigable.
It preserves your energy, too. When you aren't constantly battling against perceived differences, you have so much more bandwidth to actually build, understand, and connect.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to carry forward after we wrap up here.
Okay.
We've spent this deep dive talking about how scholars can take a dedicated platform to find profound convergence between towering historical figures who are separated by entirely different traditions.
Right. Finding the shared bedrock beneath two seemingly separate mountains.
So I want you to look at your own life today. Think about a current conflict you are facing.
Could be anything.
Maybe it's a workplace disagreement that feels completely intractable. Maybe it's a political or social issue where the opposing viewpoint causes you immense stress.
We all have those.
If you were to adopt the lens of applied Vedanta and stop looking at the differences for just one moment, where might there be a hidden fundamental oneness right in the middle of that conflict, just waiting for you to discover it?